Welcome to Season 7 of CX in the Wild. We're happy to have you back on the adventure with us again.
Here today, CX in the Wild, we just had a great warm-up. I have Carla Kossally, a CEO, founder of a new innovative startup. I met her through a mutual friend who described her as an innovative leader who is taking a risk and transforming a part of our industry that needs to be addressed. I think addressing a part of the industry that is in due need for transformation, but I don't think it's an easy task. So her bravery stood out as something that my friend described to me, and I just had to find out more about it. Carla Kossally, thank you for joining me in the studio today. It is hard to explain what you're doing because it's such a brave, and I just think everybody wants this to happen, but no one's tackled it. So I'm excited to share that with the audience. Enough of the teasing. Carla, can you just start by telling us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be on your show and looking forward to this conversation. Really appreciate you inviting me here today to talk about something that I'm passionate about. But before we get there, so I have been in the Salesforce ecosystem for going up to 15 years or thereabout. But I've lived around the world, traveled around the world, and made full circle. Lived in Africa, Australia. I'm also Australian, and then came back around to the United States. In fact, Salesforce. A consulting role in Salesforce brought me to the United States. So my experience have been in consulting and technology for most of my career. And I love people, right? So anywhere there are people, I'm there. And I love growing people and empowering people. As for what I do now, you gave a little bit of a hint, which is I'm solely focused on Soaritude, which is our for-profit business. And what we do at Soaritude is really break down barriers at the end of the day and make technology more accessible for small to medium-sized businesses, but really accessible to those people who want to compete on a scale like any other organization, right? So I'd say in a nutshell, that's essentially what we do.
So you said a lot there. I want to just unpack some of that. You're a world traveler. That's important because I also have had a chance to see a lot of cultures, and the impact to one's personal outlook on life by seeing the different ways that people live, the way they solve problems, the way they perceive and approach life. This idea of inclusivity, so many times in the United States, I think inclusivity is about skin color, but I always think it's about mental perspective. And I love that you have that, but it does take amount of bravery, because I know sometimes I find myself, I go out there out of excitement, but then I find myself in a third world country in this strange part of the city. Last year I was at one of the most dangerous cities in the world filming call center agents. And afterwards, I realized to be an adventurer like you are, it takes amount of bravery, but the benefit is you have these perspectives. You spoke about your humanitarian, your empathy for people, which is also a key factor of customer experience, by the way. But you've been heavily involved in Salesforce. Do you have a technical background, your education? Can you give us some context there?
So I would say semi-technical background. So I studied accounting for my first go around in college. Yeah. Yes. I worked with KPMG in Botswana, and there I did a little bit of IT plus management accounting, and that's where I really dipped my toe in and decided this is where I really wanted to be. Accounting, I found boring because it was really just gathering historical data. No disrespect to accountants, love them. We all need them.
But you're chasing a known outcome almost,
exactly,
right?
That's right. And so, I negotiated with my boss then, and he was very gracious. And allowed me to spend part of my time studying IT. And then from there, so I just gained certifications through Microsoft. And then, believe it or not, you're going to love this. I took a job when we went to Australia in a call center because
you are a CXer. Let's just get it out there.
Because I wanted to ensure I learned IT from the ground up. And there is no better place. They hired me as a tax consultant, but it was really, this company provided compliance software, right? So tax was part of their suite of products. So I got in there, and it was one of the best career decisions I've ever made. I describe this as a slingshot move. So basically, you know what a slingshot is, right? And therefore, I was a consultant at KPMG, but I took a call center job serving customers. But because I came from a consulting role, I was able to propel much faster from that, entry-level role when I worked at the call center to then managing teams in a matter of months, not years, right? And yes, and therefore from there I went to do another degree, which was in e-commerce. That degree doesn't exist anymore, but it was really it set me on a path of how do we solve commercial problems with technology, internet accessibility, all of that kind of thing. And from there, I just moved into different technologies, but always consulting. And then I had this really boutique construction and engineering company client in Australia who asked me to evaluate Salesforce. I ran a 2-year project for them, really transforming the way they do business to being more online, including, video conferencing systems, moving them to online products rather than their client server type products. And so the CEO asked me to evaluate Salesforce. I had actually evaluated Salesforce prior to that. And I go, no, there's no way I would use it or recommend it. But when the CEO came back and asked me to take a look at it, I looked at it again and I went, yes, this is now more at a place ready for prime time, right? And so through that process, I met the Salesforce AE, Victoria McDonald. Hope she doesn't kill me for saying her name, but she was really impressed with how that client actually trusted me and trusted the fact that I could lead them in the right direction. And so she actually recommended that I become an ISV partner of Salesforce. So that's a partner who actually build products on top of the Salesforce platform. So
how many years ago would you say you were building products on top of the Salesforce platform?
I think our first product was 2012.
Okay.
Thereabout.
Okay.
We built our first product on the Salesforce platform.
Now, before we go on,
Right.
So we're at the point where you're building products on Salesforce. But you said so much. It sounded like you said you were working in a call center in Botswana?
That's correct.
Okay.
In Australia.
What in Botswana you were doing
KPMG, I worked as
KPMG, and then you went to a call center in Australia.
That's correct.
Okay. I love that so much. I've learned so much working on the front lines in call centers. Talking to customers and working with people who talk to customers is so enlightening.
It is.
It gives you that grounding. So many executives, and I guess I'm pausing on this because not only do I admire it, but you're a CEO, founder, leader now, but you'll always have that. So many executives that I speak to, they care about customers. They care about sales, but I'm not sure they always connect the customers to the sales.
Yep.
So that's such an important, I think, piece of corporate DNA, and I think that can't be stressed enough. How valuable, even if somebody goes in for a day. I mean, I don't work in call centers. I've only been in there for a day or two at a time, but it's so important. So that's an amazing story. What would you say was your key insight working in those call centers? Like, do you have a core memory where you thought, because you had the slingshot moment, but did you have something where you said, what I knew before this and now what I know after?
Yeah. I would say the one memory that I have that I've taken with me, it's the psychology of dealing with customers. See, the underlying thing that a customer wants hasn't really changed, right? They want someone to resolve their issue in a timely manner. They want to be heard. They want to know that they matter and that they're not just a number. And of course, they want to be treated with respect, right? So that hasn't changed. But even dealing with difficult customers, one of the things we figured out in our group in the call center is that if the customer is upset with me, not necessarily because of anything I have done as an agent, one of the things we can do, even though you and I are on the same level as agents, we can ask the customer, would you like to speak to someone else who will be able to resolve, your issue? The response is always yes, they'll take it, because right now I'm a barrier to providing that solution for the customer. And just a little bit of patience and switching the customer over to someone else, actually that person knows exactly what I know and it gives the same solution, but the customer is more accepting of that solution. So really having the insight in your own team and the patience to actually go, I could either shut this customer down and make their life difficult, or I could exercise a little bit of patience and empathy and get someone else to deal with them. It takes a little more time, but that customer will likely love you for life, right?
It's a humanitarian thing to do.
It is.
It also it exemplifies a kind of teamwork amongst agents. Sometimes it's not the customer's problem. Sometimes we're just having a bad day. It's like,
exactly.
I think I've had enough. Can someone help me with this? Hearing that story from a CEO, this is going to be a core memory for me. I don't speak to senior executives, especially CEOs, who have had those experiences, and the insight that sharing the role of providing empathy. I always talk about one-to-one empathy, but you just expressed empathy, team play, from one man to man or woman to woman to zone empathy. Zone empathy is your key takeaway, and that is brilliant. I'm going to probably write a blog post about that. If you don't mind, I might call back on you for some content.
Absolutely.
With that said, that I think sets the perfect stage of you as a leader, and just because you don't call yourself a customer experience professional, but you have just spoken about CX this whole way. You have this logical, analytical, profit-driven mindset throughout your career. You get into technology, e-commerce, digital commerce. You're at really a really important era for Salesforce.
Yeah.
You are an ISV. You're creating products on top of Salesforce in about 12, 13, 14 years ago. Take us from there.
Right. So I'll tell you a little bit about the first product we created. So my husband is an engineer, worked for lots of enterprise engineering companies across the world, real estate. And so he actually had a problem that no piece of software was solving at that time. And so he came to me and go, I have this giant spreadsheet. Can you use Salesforce to solve it? And basically our first product on the Salesforce platform was born, Building Lifecycle Manager. We actually didn't focus too much on it because we were doing some other things, but it solved the problem beautifully. Not even the top software out there was solving that problem. But to carry on, as far as my journey goes, we came to the United States from Australia with a Salesforce consulting firm, and my job was to really oversee a portfolio of Salesforce implementation projects. I did enterprise. I specialized in enterprise and implementations and programs. And so I did that for a number of years, and then moved into more recently, like over the last 5 years, focus more on organizations that were building products on the Salesforce platform. So I help them to bring those products to market, to build them and bring them to market. So I won't say any names here, but they are some of the biggest products built on the Salesforce platform.
Sure. I don't know if it's being in our age group, we saw a lot because coming from a time before the internet and the amount of investment that went into technology and the internet and platforms, you had the rise of these giants, whether it's Sun Microsystems, Oracle, Salesforce, Adobe, all of these giants who invested so much, and so much of the education that we had to obtain was a moving target, and we had to adjust as time went on. You learned as you went, and
Right.
very few made it to the enterprise level that you're describing. I mean, you had to be very good, but you also had to be at the right place at the right time. You had to be dependable, and you had to, I think, not taking anything away from what you've done, but for you to be successful, you would have had to be in a pocket of innovation where you could see the innovation almost as it was happening. Not to use an old tired term from those days, but you almost had to surf the innovation to be able to deliver it, because the dynamics, the change was so wide and the scale was so big. For you to be creating enterprise level solutions, your knowledge in that pocket is very unique. And so, which leads us to today, why I think you're delivering the solution you are.
Yeah.
Why don't we jump right to that? But before, I'm always like, let's go here. But before we go on to your innovative solution, I would like, because it's March, I'm just curious. Do you think that there was any lesson or contextual advice that you might pass on as a woman that's gone from the beginning to CEO through all these countries, all these different jobs? And, again, it's been a transformative time for the genders in the United States. Certainly I think you can't address it in the same way everywhere around the world, but we're in the United States right now. It's a topic this month. I'm really, I'm trying to highlight women's issues, but I'm not a woman. I have a wife and daughters, and I try to be respectful, but I don't have any insights. What can we pass on to the audience, to daughters, young professionals, folks who are trying to become CEOs?
I think, you hit on something really important as far as if we're looking at careers, right? Which is the constant reinvention of yourself, right? Because especially women in technology, not just women, but anyone in technology, but if we're speaking to women, the technology is moving so fast. It's impossible to read everything. It's impossible to know everything. So one of the things I do is I watch trends. So there are fads and there are long-term trends. So picking the long-term trends is key to making sure you're on that path where you're going to constantly innovate, right? If you pick the trend wrong and you end up with following a fad, it will die, right? So from a career perspective, I usually look at the long-term trends, and you get on that track, and you are bound to end up somewhere where you are relevant, right? Your knowledge and your skill, that's all relevant. So that would be my advice from a career perspective.
What a great advice. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic advice. All right. Now, because you are a trend spotter, here we are. You're really at the very first steps of delivering this new solution to the marketplace. I'm very grateful because I feel like I'm part of the breaking of the story. It's such a big offering to the market. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely. So, Salesforce is a pioneer in really bringing what used to be all code to the front end, as we say, and making it easy for administrators, people who administer technology, right, to be able to do point and click without having to write code. So at the time that Salesforce did it, no one knew, there wasn't even a term coined, I don't believe, as no code or low code. So what we have today is a low code platform, right? Which means that you can accomplish a great deal on the platform without ever writing code, right? So we have taken that a step further, right? So coming back to user experiences, users are demanding more from their digital experiences. It doesn't matter who you are, what size of company you are. It's not that they don't care, but they care more about how they experience you as a company, right? And as a service that you are providing. This is providing amazing user experience is very expensive. It is, from my own experience, you're talking about, 7 figures to provide even a small app that has a robust backend system with amazing considerations, feedback, and things like that for the end user. But Salesforce has done a great job in bringing us to a place where we can do some of that without code. But again, our users are demanding more, right? Our customers demand more. So what we have done is brought the persona design element together with data, and on top of the Salesforce platform, made it easy for businesses to deliver amazing end user experiences through clicks, point and click, drag and drop, not writing millions of lines of code, right? So I know it's probably challenging for anyone to visualize, but if
you go ahead.
Yeah.
You have a visualization.
But if you think about building a website, for example, rather than, writing code, you can just drag and drop things on a page and then publish it. That's what we have made possible with the Salesforce platform and Experience Cloud. Now, to be clear, Salesforce provides the builder through Experience Cloud. What we have done is rather than organizations or businesses building their own individual components that you drop on the page, we have gone out and we have built over 150 components at this stage. And we are continuing to build. So, every week we are adding to the number of components that we have. And basically, we give you a shopping cart, right? And you have the option to come view the store, say, okay, I want these 3 components. You purchase them, you put them in your Experience Cloud, and then drag and drop them on pages.
So, a lot.
Yes,
Buzzwords,
yes.
No code, low code.
Yes.
Let me throw out a metaphor,
Right.
or an simile that came to my mind as you were talking. Would it be safe to say that Salesforce is, let's say that Salesforce's mission was to in a new and exciting way, feed the business communities.
Right.
They came up with this they solved a problem that everyone was hungry for.
Yes.
Okay. And let's just call that digital pizza.
Right.
And they created the dough and they created the oven. And then the problem is that if you wanted it to do something very special, like if you wanted pepperoni or sausage,
right,
you had to go out and it was pretty expensive to make your own sausage.
Absolutely.
So what you've done is you've made a kind of sausage, a kind of pepperoni, another kind of topping here and there, and you created sort of a grocery store or a market of different toppings that someone can go and rather than in an expensive 7-figure way make their own sausage, they can come to you, get the sausage, put it on their digital pizza, and with the combination of you and Salesforce, they can address the market need in a way that is easy as ordering a pizza.
That is, now I'm going to have to take your analogy and write a blog post. That is exactly right.
Okay.
That is exactly right.
Okay, so let's break that down. I love that we're talking about this. So because I like to unpack, if you don't mind, I like to nerd out a little bit.
Absolutely.
Because I grew up through these eras. It is so difficult to build these engines. You see these giant engines of Oracle, Salesforce, Adobe, others who they've by development and acquisition and integration created these. They are almost like entire cities of software that are held together through electricity and plumbing and aqueducts and they're amazing though, but they also exhibit a lot of the challenges of managing a city. But I think that they are wonderful, in terms of what they've been able to do for business and subsequently what it's done for the quality of life for a lot of people. And they've really been the pillars that have given the value to the internet that has become the entertainment value for our consumers.
Right.
So, but in that wave of business, sometimes the complexity makes it inaccessible. So in its complexity, it does become inaccessible for those who, back to our original conversation, have not been able to surf the pocket of innovation, have not been able to understand all of the steps that it took us to get here, who don't have the breadcrumbs or the political internal connections or the know-how to get to these changes. So what you're really doing is not only making pizza, but I think what you're doing is you're opening a door, kind of a starting point for a new generation of people. So you're acknowledging all of the existing customers of Salesforce, but you're almost giving a fresh starting point for a whole new generation of Salesforce customers. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly. Because as we alluded to, these technologies are out of the reach of, the average company. And even if you are in the middle or small somewhat and you invest in the platform, to really get the most out of that investment, you have to invest more, right? And therefore, what we are doing is making the power of the platform more accessible. So if you do an initial investment, you don't have to do an even larger investment to serve your customers and partners, and get the most out of it, right? Like you rightly said, these technologies, they bring together data, integrations, and visualize data that is being done in a way that hasn't been done quite like it before, right? So all we're doing is really taking it that step further without the hefty price tag.
You know who you remind me of? For a short time in my career, I was working alongside a gentleman named Matt Mullenweg.
Right.
And he created WordPress.
Right.
So his idea was, instead of making everyone code web pages, he just said, let's make it so people could do it themselves.
Right.
And he made it accessible, and what happened was a lot more people. So that's kind of why I think you're opening the door. Can we talk about a use case? I think we've talked metaphorically.
Right.
Let's just talk. Who's going to use this thing? When you as you go to market this year, who are your first customers going to be?
Our customers are going to be, we cut across industry and domains. So our customer is going to be those who want to reach their end customer without having to pay for a full license for Salesforce, and who wants to keep their brand and engage their end customers in a new way. So let's talk about a use case.
Yeah.
You're a small contact center. Right?
Okay.
So let's go there, right?
All right.
So you're a small contact center or customer response center, but you need a CRM, and you also need a way to provide a knowledge base to your end customer. Most of your customers are on their mobile phones. So how do you do that without going out and building an app, buying a CRM system, then having to integrate that, right? Let's say you did invest in Salesforce, right? But then you still have the issue of this app that you need to visualize data, to potentially use some AI function to incorporate chat. What you can do is with our offering of Soaritude templates is build a page and a knowledge base. You can build an online help center, right? That actually gets all its data from Salesforce and wherever else the data sits that you have curated, brought into the mobile app with our solution. So you visualize your data, you have a knowledge base, you've got ways of chatting, you've got ways of people just servicing themselves and getting answers just through their mobile app.
Let's dive in there, because I talk to so many people, Carla,
Yes.
and everybody's like, I have this thing, you wave a magic wand, everything snaps into place, and boom, it's awesome.
Right.
And the fact is, I understand the value in that statement, but people have been saying that for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. And every time we get in there, there's all these integrations. It's like I have to unplug this, and then, oh my God, I didn't realize this wasn't going to work. And then I have to buy this other thing. And I think that is the reality. But I also realize that every year that a company comes out, a new startup like yourself, you are in a better position to deliver more of that. But let's use your use case.
Yes.
Just so I want to understand how clear or really difficult it is. I have Salesforce already.
Right.
Salesforce underneath in its engine has invested a gazillion dollars at creating its own ability to do many of these things that I want to do. And in fact, I probably could get in there and tinker with it and make it do what I want already. Is it safe to say that let's assume I have Salesforce and I have many of these capabilities, it's just kind of difficult for me to isolate those services and then surface them to both my internal teams and my external customers. So let's assume those are already there.
Right.
And does your company, Soaritude, do you have a front-end piece that is designed specifically to work with Salesforce that just essentially says, put my logo here and put it on the web, so you make it accessible to the web? So it's a matter of essentially making it active through Soaritude, connecting it to my, like logging in and connecting it to my Salesforce, and you've done the coding to make it connect to the engine?
Yes.
Is that simple?
Yes. So, yes, if you've got Salesforce,
yes,
there is work to be done on the platform to ready your data, to make sure you have all of your data and processes in place.
Let's
so let's assume that's done, right? So where we come in is we have pre-built all of your, your logo, where you should place your logo. We have pre-built your visualization components, and we have given you the ability to say, I want to pick this data from the back, just from a click to say, I want to pick that data from the back to be displayed here, right? So, so all of the coding, all of that has been done already. You are just telling this, we call them components. They're like building blocks, right? So think of Lego. You've got lots of different Lego blocks. If you think about your web page, you've got a navigation bar, you've got a hero component, you've got a footer. We've built all of those components, right? And now you just have to tell those components where to get the information. That's already in Salesforce. So you don't have to do any building. We've done all of that.
You know what this reminds me of?
Yeah.
There was this time I used to write code. A little unknown fact about me is I started out as a programmer. So I would write HTML. I then also I took C++ classes, the whole bit, because everybody was trying to figure out a program back in those days. So I used to sit there and write HTML all day long, every day, like for years I did that. And I remember the importance of having an HTML web developer.
Right.
And then there was like overnight, people started taking their websites that they had figured out this navigation, these best practices, and they started providing online resources where you could essentially get prefabricated websites with all the best practices. And then they started making those better. And now, my stock photo, stock art, I have stock best practice basic websites. Are you essentially doing that?
That's exactly what we're doing on the Salesforce platform. So we have implemented best practices for UX design, how things are engineered on the Salesforce platform, using Salesforce best practices, and pulling those all together in a nicely packaged system to deliver to you.
You're really just the next era.
That's exactly
the next generation. You're making it, because it was, what it did was, in the website space, there was this giant barrier of entry. People didn't know how to code. Yes. It was super expensive. I remember people paid like $250,000 to have web developers sit there and make web pages. And
Right.
then you could do it for like $10,000 or something.
Right.
So,
Yes.
all right. You are providing a new I don't take this the wrong way, but it's almost like you're providing a new basic standard for Salesforce solutions. And it's not across the board, right? You have a marketplace
Yes.
of specific best practice solutions that you've created. There will be more over time. So you're not saying you're the end all be all for everything, but what you are saying is you have a series of solutions that you know there's demand for. They
Yes.
will help people who want to do these things quickly. It's kind of a new way to do it, and when are these going to be available?
They are available already.
How many
Yes.
solutions are there?
We have over 150 components at the moment,
Wow.
and continuing to build. So
Kind of makes me want to go out and get Salesforce.
yeah. But I will say, to your earlier point, really, what we are doing is on top of the Salesforce platform, breaking down the barriers of building websites on the Salesforce platform and leveraging the data that you already have in Salesforce, right? So you are making this seamless, right? Taking what because often what happens is that you invest in a system like Salesforce, you have all the data in your organization, but you're not able to effectively use it to serve your customers, because now you are going to have to go out to a different technology to build a website. What we are saying is, and Salesforce made this possible, but we have, like you said, build the toppings for the pizza, is basically make that even more seamless for you to build your marketing and service websites on top of the data. It's sitting on top of the data. And now we made it possible for you to leverage that data to serve your audiences more effectively and more cost effective.
If I was following that, so it's not just about if I have Salesforce and I want to do new things to catch up or be innovative, or I want to invest and grow my business. You're saying that if I've been using Salesforce for quite a while,
Yes.
I can potentially maybe one, swap out some of my more expensive ways of doing things.
Exactly.
Two, there may be data in there that can be repurposed using some of your tools that gives me a new innovative or a competitive advantage, or maybe it opens up a new channel for me
Yes.
that I wasn't using, I could have been using, but I'm not.
That's exactly right.
So in some ways, it is just like, I'm sorry to make it so easy, but it is. I remember going back in building web pages, and you're like, oh, I really wish I had this parallax thing, or I had a form or whatever. And now you
Yes.
can get those very easily. The and at its basic, there is this underlying, I think this gets back to your empathy and your logic, which is am I true in thinking that part of what sort of, I don't know, keeps you up at night, but part of your cause is there's a lot of things that are inside this engine that should be accessible to the business that just aren't. It's almost like if I had a car and I had my family out there and we were pushing it. And you're like, if you just got inside and pressed this gas pedal,
Yes.
you want people to maximize their investment.
That's exactly right.
I guess, whether it's your counting, your empathy, is really what your mission is to make people realize their investment.
Yes.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to understand.
You're absolutely right. My mission in life is really to empower people. At the heart of it. So, whether I have someone reporting to me or it's a client, or I want, when they have left me, that I empowered them. I made their lives so much better.
Where does that come from?
I think it comes from my faith, and also my upbringing. We grew up very humble, but my parents, there was never too little not to share, if that makes sense.
So I want to jump in there.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm curious because I keep bumping into people, and I grew up in poverty.
Yes.
I'm talking about poverty. And what always interests me about people who say they're about empowering others, many of them came from humble beginnings.
Yes.
And what's interesting about poor people, I'm not saying poor people, I count myself as a poor person. You get 3 poor people together and somebody needs money, the first person to give them money is another poor person.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
we're like, here, you can have it. I might need it later, but you can have what I have. Yeah. It's really interesting how the idea of empowerment, this seems like the less you have, the more ingrained it is to give. I don't understand it, but it's a beautiful survival mechanism for the human species.
It is. I guess the less you have, the more you realize that having lots isn't really all that important. Although we were poor in material things, we were very rich in family. Mm-hmm. We were like the top 1% in the things that really mattered, right? The family and relationships and extended family, including the church. So we were very, very rich in that respect. And therefore, you understood what was truly important, not stuff. It really is the people and relationships.
And so does that intrinsically carry over to your desire to make people maximize their Salesforce? How does that translate?
I think it translates in, wow, you've made so much investment in this piece of technology, and you thought it was going to do everything, including make you a cup of coffee, and it didn't really do that. And you discovered that you also need, consultants to help you to make it work, right? And so, yes, it is that empathy that goes, you could get more out of it if you had this one other piece, right? And therefore, I, as a consultant as well, in this space, my journey has been to ensure that whatever you invest in, that you're getting the most out of it.
I'm laughing because we'll kind of end on this, which is there's intellectual poverty, there is technological poverty, there is a lack of resources, there's a lack of knowledge, and wherever we can be a guide to help others, really, when it comes down to it, reinventing yourself, or also known as adaptability or resilience, is about surfing the technology and staying on trend is really about finding where the knowledge, the economic, the technological efficiencies are starting to be born. And I think you're right on it. It's for that reason why I wanted you on the podcast. And I'm excited about your adventure. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me, the heart and inspiration behind it. And I'm very excited for the innovations ahead that you're taking to market. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up our time together today?
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to say thank you again, Dennis, for having me. It's been a really good conversation. I've enjoyed it and enjoyed telling the story. I think for your audience, I would say that human relationships, which is something that we focus on, human-centric relationships, and irrespective of how much the technology grows, if you leave the human element out of it, we're worse. We're worse off. So, which is why we always focus on bringing back human and technology together. When you marry those two, what you get is something really, really amazing. And yeah, would love to hear from some of your audience what they think about Soaritude.
Well, I'm going to put all of your contact information out there in when I share this with the audience. I can honestly say I'm going to, I'm going to share this with as many people as possible, and I'll tell you why. One, first, it's March, and I'm celebrating women, leading women. Two, for me personally, it's about this door opening to the next generation. So similarly to you, but one of my personal missions in adjacent to you, but in the same realm, is I want to open the doorways and invite the next generations to these playgrounds of technology and conversation. And so I believe that you're a doorway to a new era of Salesforce. I also like to support the tried and true, the innovators, the brands who laid the foundation. People like to criticize a lot of these behemoth platforms, but until you walk a mile in their shoes, you have no idea what it took to just build that television or microwave or internationally translated, integrated, scaled, cloud-based CRM, AI engine. So I'm gonna celebrate you as a woman, as a CEO, as an innovative leader, and doorway to the future of technology and people out there. So you can count on me.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to access other podcasts, YouTube videos, or join Dennis on other adventures around the world, be sure to connect with us at www.globalvoiceofcx.com. Until next time, stay curious.